Welcome, my beautiful, wonderful listener, to the Talking About Talking podcast, where we talk about everything and anything, and we talk about talking about those things. Today, I am joined by Derek Myatt. Derek owns a garlic farm in Montreal. He's been farming for 11 years, and for the past 3 years, he's been traveling the world working with refugees during the winters, teaching them to farm and live a sustainable lifestyle. Thank you for joining me today, Derek.
Hey, nice to finally meet you. How are you doing?
Good,
Thank
man.
you for that beautiful intro.
Yeah, I do what I can. So you told me last time that you've been wanting to work with refugees since 2018. So first, when did you start working with refugees, and then why do you say you've been wanting to since 2018? What made you start wanting to?
I was in Ivory Coast working on this mission to give out. We were producing 1 hectare irrigation kits, and I stayed there for 6 months, and I seen that I was seeing how much impact I was doing, and I just wanted to get further closer. I went to this village and I seen how the villagers were living, and I went to this cacao farm where there's like the whole village was collecting chocolate, and I was like, oh man, like my mission here could be even greater. And then I guess it touched me a lot, and wanted to, instead of working with business, I wanted to transition towards people, is more or less the short answer
Okay.
to that question,
So
I
when
guess.
when you were working
Yeah.
on the Ivory Coast, it was all business purposes.
Yeah, it was business, and yeah, more or less business, and trying to get farmers like better equipment, because most of the stuff was coming from China, and or it was coming from Israel. And they were just like, there was like, either you're getting really bad quality, or you're just getting like really good quality but too expensive. So we're coming in and trying to get better quality for a better price from stuff from the United States and Canada.
That makes sense.
But yeah.
So you also used to work at Young Roots Farm for about 10 years in Montreal.
Yeah, Young Roots Farm Rep. Yeah, Young Roots is a project that Liang and our friend Kai have. Well, Liang started it, and I was one of the first employees that was there, and it was just beautiful. It was it's like, basically, it's 450 kids from inner Montreal that come through the camp and learn about sustainable agriculture, and also just getting exposed to vegetable cooking. And just sometimes it's the first time they've pulled out a carrot, a radish, or seen zucchinis or cucumbers or squash. So it's very educational, and that's where my passion for farming actually grew. And yeah.
Yeah, and you were saying that that program was specifically designed in a way to kind of favor lower income families.
Yeah, exactly. So majority of the people that end up coming to this camp and are from underprivileged backgrounds, from broken homes, and like in foster care. So that's why I'm saying it was like, it's very important, their exposure to nature. And we had this like pesto project where people would also, like, the kids could go to markets, and they were making a product. They were making pesto from our garden. So we'd have garlic, basil, and we'd buy like stuff like salt, pepper, and some sunflower, and then we would transform it, and then we'd go to market, and then it would expose them to like different skills, like learning how to sell stuff and getting out of their comfort zone, and talking to strangers. So it's all these like different skills that they could use, and maybe to also like tell them that things are possible, and show them that they could make money, and just expose them to that world.
Yeah,
I think
that
they
is
can do
pretty
any.
awesome. And I think you were saying that like the cost of it was scaled to each family.
Yeah, so like Camp Amy Molson's mission is really to so that it's accessible to every family. And that's their huge mission. Camp Amy Molson has done that for a long time. It's a camp that's been around since 1944, and about 130 kids come per session. So, and there's 3 sessions, and then there's some lap over. Some kids come all summer, so you get to grow that bond from them. Yeah,
Nice.
huge.
I
Yeah.
hate to throw us off here. I can only like see your forehead.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
There you go.
I was just more focused into it. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Thanks. You mentioned going to New Zealand. Why were you in New Zealand?
So I went to New Zealand to kind of like kickstart to travel and do a work holiday visa. It was a huge dream of mine to do a work holiday visa. For people that don't know what it is for the viewers, you can apply to go to New Zealand and get a work holiday visa where you can work for that in the country for like 2 years if you wanted to, and you get it within 24 hours. You just apply and you can go through. It's really cool.
Within
And it
24
was big.
hours.
Yeah, the application, like boom, and then
Wow.
you can just go fly out there. And yeah.
So what you're telling me is if someone's listening to this, and I think 18 is the requirement on that.
Yeah,
Is
18
there
years
like an
old.
age cap? Is it like targeted to youths?
35.
Okay, so if you're
35
between the
years
ages
old.
of 18 and 35, you could go apply to this work holiday visa in New Zealand right now, and then in like 3 days be in New Zealand working.
Yeah, working wherever you want. And yeah, and I use that so that I can go work on small farms and go hiking. And also the minimum wage out there is really high too. So it's like $18 and 18.70, and then they give you like holiday pay, 8% holiday pay. So it's really cool. So it's kind of like I went out there to explore. Like it's such a beautiful country, and you're like so lucky if you get to go out there and experience the hiking out there and the countryside, and the farming out there is really good as well. It's like very, very beautiful, and you can almost grow everything in that country.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. They got the kind of temperature and ecosystem that you can grow everything. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, like it's very. Yeah, the temperature out there is really good too. It's a very mild winter.
If you notice me looking to my left, my notes are on this screen, by the way. I'm not not paying attention.
Yeah, no.
Just
It's all good.
just
It's
so
all
we're
good.
clear on that. You said you walked the Camino del Santiago, and so it's a pilgrimage. And I had to look this up because I didn't know what the hell you were talking about. So for our listeners, a pilgrimage, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but a pilgrimage is this ritualistic walk that is done it's typically founded on, I think it seemed like what I was seeing, a lot of it was founded on the Catholic religion. And it's about walking where Jesus walked during whatever famous moments that Jesus traveled in different areas. And it's not always Jesus. You can do a pilgrimage based on other famous persons in the Bible and religious purposes and where they went and stuff. So this Camino del Santiago is over 1,000 kilometers, I believe, and you walked the whole thing.
Yeah, the original way to walk the Camino is from your front door. So if you live in Europe, anywhere in Europe or in Asia, you would just like start from your front door and start this like walk. So if you lived in Germany, if you lived in Hungary, you would have to start from your front door. But because most North Americans and Asian people that do end up taking this pilgrimage, the majority of the people start at the front hill of the Pyrenees in Saint Jean de Pied-Fort, where more like I'd say 30 to 40% of the people start from there.
So what's special about that spot?
That spot is like the south of France and the northern hills of Spain. So it's like this really super beautiful start to the hike. You're crossing over like this beautiful rolling hills of the Pyrenees, and it's like it's just more or less. And I think why the majority of people why they start there is just because it's just like a beautiful point to start. There's like trails that start everywhere. Like
Is there no like
you start.
sorry, is there no like religious connotation to that location?
I if there was, I wouldn't 100% know
Okay.
because there's over a million different parts of like there like all of Europe has starting points.
Okay.
So majority of people I think start there because it's a really nice part of the mountains, and then you do a nice view of over the mountains. You cross the border from France to Spain, and then you start your walk towards Santiago.
And how long did that take you?
It's 30 days, like about 30 days. Like I started October 3rd, 2015, and I finished around Halloween, and then I continued to the end of the world at the time where they thought it was Musha and Finisterre, which is the furthest point east of Europe or west of Europe.
And
But yeah, I'll continue.
did you
Sorry, what
did
was
were
your
you
question?
wearing a clamshell? Did you have
Yeah, I had a clamshell. Yeah,
yeah.
I picked one up and I had it on my bag. And it's just like so spiritually awakening. Like everyone has their own reasons why they do the Camino del Santiago. Certain people do it for religious backgrounds. Some people do it because they've lost a person in their life. Some people do it because it's a nice goal, it's a nice mission, or it's been a dream, or they've heard about it through other people and they heard it's like a beautiful experience. I heard about it when I was doing a Vipassana that same year. I did this 10-day silent meditation, and at the end of that meditation, I was like, "Oh, how'd you hear about this?" And they're like, "Oh, a bunch of people recommended the Camino." So I was like, oh, I knew that I had to do the Camino because people were speaking so highly of it and how it changed their life. And for me, coming outside of that Vipassana and asking people why they came here, and they were so adamant about this Camino that I had to do it. And it was by far the most beautiful thing I've ever done because you meet people from all walks of life. And yeah, like I've met like every person from the globe I think was on that trail, and you're just the one goal you have is you wake up and you start walking,
Yeah.
and you have start chit chatting with strangers, and then you have these deep connections. You start talking to people about either your deepest secrets or your most vulnerable parts of your life. And I met like lifelong friends that I still talk to that like they were on it fundraising for mental health. And I was kind of my role when I was there is just trying to listen to people while they're healing on their healing journey. So yeah, it was so special.
That I love the sounds of that. That sounds awesome. This like you specifically said like talking about your secrets or your vulnerabilities. Is that like a commonality of people that do this? They while they're walking with people, they talk about these vulnerable things.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you let all social barriers down and you just start clicking with people, and then you start chatting about real things. Like the first 15 minutes is like, oh, where are you from? Buen Camino. And then you actually go into these deep conversations of like life that you're having, your struggles that you've been through. And then you can really, at first, you're a stranger. So you're just like, you don't really care what you're saying or how you're feeling because you're just being so vulnerable, and you're in this safe environment, like, and you just let out a lot of your emotions.
That's pretty neat. I've spoke before about how I don't get it when you go on like a city bus in Toronto and you're basically a bunch of people that have a commonality. You ride the bus and you're all going somewhere. So you got somewhere to be. Everyone has a destination. Everyone rides the bus. You already got some stuff in common, and you're in this little box that is a room for a duration of time. You just got to wait until you hit your stop, and nobody's talking to each other about anything. Everyone's just in their own little world and reading their book, which that would be nice. They're really not. Everyone's on their phone or like listening to something. And I
listening to us.
Yeah, that would be awesome if one day that happened. But basically, it's, to me, I'm like, why isn't more people talking to each other? So I like this idea that you're kind of proposing this on this pilgrimage of these people that all have a common goal, that are all spending some time near each other, that are just taking the time to get to know each other and kind of make those deeper connections. And that's just something that I feel like we should be doing more in the world, kind of everywhere. But every time I present that, people are always like, oh, I don't want to hear about other people's shit, and people don't want to hear about my shit, and whatever. It's my problems are my problems and their problems can be their problems, kind of thing. And I don't think that's true. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with my girlfriend. We were just talking about, because I was just coming back from Iraq, and I was I was talking to her about the community and the sense of community, that like everyone has this deeper longing for their friends and their family, and everyone eats together. And I was wondering why we live these like individualistic lives in Canada, and is it due to the government? Is it due to businesses? What's the cause of our individualistic? Is it the way we've been raised in the West, or is it due to our lack of religion that is bringing us together? And I don't necessarily have a good answer to why we're not talking to each other on the bus, but I do see that people tend to be a lot closer, and like I think it's about judgment too. I think we live in a world where we're constantly judging people for what they're wearing, for what they have, for whatever reason. And I think that's a huge challenge, I think, that we're going through.
I think that's a really good point. The whole judgment factor. Like I have a 1-year-old. She's 13 months, and I've really tried since becoming a dad to lose my judgments, because going into being a parent, I had all these kind of preconceptions about what kind of parent I was going to be, and the strategies I was going to use, and why I was going to parent the way I was going to parent. And with every decision comes consequences one way or another. Like nothing is perfect, right? And like for example, we co-sleep. So I just slept with my daughter last night, and my fiance slept in another bed so that she could get a full night's sleep, because my daughter is a terrible sleeper. She does not just sleep through the night. A lot of people are like, oh, my baby at 6 months, I just put him down and he'll sleep for 6 hours. And I'm like, fuck you. Yeah, that's nice. But she just thrashes and whines and needs comfort and needs contact and needs to cuddle. And so like, I used to think, oh, people that sleep train, that like let their baby cry it out, I used to think, oh, you're a bad parent. Like, why would you do that to your child? Obviously they're very upset and whatever. And I just was in my head on this high horse about co-sleeping. And now I've seen how much of a struggle co-sleeping can be. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Like if you want to sleep train your kid, you go for it. No judgment here. You do whatever the hell you want. And so, I think more people need to do that whole eliminating judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Especially that I feel like our society also has been a little bit softened up, We're like very soft, and we expect everything all the time, instant gratification. But I guess it doesn't necessarily come at a very toddler age too, though. So I think
talking about people being soft, that drives me nuts. That's a whole thing. Actually, I want to touch on that I don't know. I do want to work that in. There was a specific thing I wanted to work that into though,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
like,
we can get into.
yeah. So first I want to get into what you're doing. So where have you been? You've been in Iraq, you've been to Jordan.
Yeah, I've
Is that
been
it?
to Greece.
You've been to Greece.
I've been
Right,
to
right.
Greece.
You went
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
Moria refugee camp.
yeah.
Okay, so what
Moria
do you want to talk
refugee
about first? Do you
camp.
want to talk about Moria or do you want to talk about the other stuff you're doing in Iraq or Jordan?
Yeah, let's. I
You you,
think we can
you
talk
take it whichever
to.
way you want. We'll cover all of it,
We
but
can cover Moria refugee camp now if you want, and then we
yeah.
can go into, yeah. We
Yeah,
can
so
finish off with
I
what
looked into that too. And
did you?
holy shit. So for the listeners, the Moria refugee camp was the biggest refugee camp in Europe. It was based in Greece. I believe it housed mostly Syrian refugees.
Right,
And
right.
it was originally built and intended for 2,500 people. In 2018, it housed 8,000. And Greece was considering shutting down the camp. And in 2020, the camp caught fire and
Yeah, I was there.
most of the shit burnt down. And it's been evacuated. And the new camp is Karatepe, I believe.
Karatepe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's in Athens, I think. Is it? I don't remember exactly.
No, no. It's still on the island. It's
Oh,
still on
okay.
the island.
Yeah, the
And when I
island.
was there, the numbers keep changing, but I know on the island for sure there's 35,000 people, and about 19,000 people were at that camp when I was
Holy
there.
shit.
And that was the number that was being told around.
What year were you there?
I was there in 2020. I was there right during the pandemic, when the pandemic happened, January throughout. There was a couple fires before, and then there was a fire that happened just after. Well, the fire happened a couple months after I actually left. But in 2020, it was when I was there. I was teaching. Like teaching farming and gardening, and it was this like place at One Happy Family this was like probably the craziest experience of my life. Like I was, yeah, I'm just gonna put this down. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically I was there in 2020, and actually, when I ended up going to Greece, I didn't know that I was gonna end up in Moria refugee camp. I thought I was just gonna go to a refugee camp, and then when I got to the island when I went to the eco hub, where I was teaching and facilitating this like really calm area that people can escape the camp and just relax and just like breathe, because that camp is so chaotic. If like you can hear, and there's like, I was working with a lot of unaccompanied minors that were there from the ages of 3 to 17 without like parents or family members that were taking care of them, and there's about like 3,800 kids that didn't have parents with them, and they were just, yeah, there's not enough bathrooms, there wasn't enough doctors, water, they were rationing off water. People would wake up at like Fijr, which is their first pray, so they would do their first pray and then stand in line for food, and the food would only open at like 8 o'clock, and everyone would line up. There's these huge lines of people waiting for food, and take like 3 hours, 4 hours to get like a piece of toast and egg, and then they'd have to wait or go into town or go to other organizations to get lunch. And yeah, the estimated time if you were there was like 6 months to 2 years if you're lucky. And I met some people.
And that
like
estimated time is for what? Like for them to move you out of the camp to somewhere else, or?
Yeah, to move you to Athens to another camp, and then you would go to that camp, and then you would go from that camp on to another camp.
So before we keep going, I do want to address a refugee. Like I've heard the word refugee a bunch before, but before talking to you, I I just kind of had a general idea of what it was. So, refugee is basically someone who is escaping their country because there's typically a war or some sort of catastrophic event that's pushing them out of their country because they feel unsafe, right? And they leave their homes
Yeah.
and they take bare essentials, basically. And this is where it got interesting because I was watching, you can find this video on YouTube of this kind of little documentary, these two guys sticking around in the Moria refugee camp after the fire, just scrounging for metal scraps and doing everything they can to get enough metal scraps to pay for food. And then you see a clip of this guy on a cell phone, like a nice iPhone, and he's like FaceTiming his mom. And you kind of think, it's kind of weird as someone like me who has all kinds of opportunity in my life to see a video of someone with a cell phone that is scrounging for metal scraps to pay for food. It just doesn't seem like that adds up, but they were living a normal life in their country before they had to exit. And it was just that a phone is an excellent tool, and you're obviously going to hang on to that as much as you can to be able to communicate with your
Yeah.
family and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so just to add on, like when that fire happened, like there was no assistant, no aid for like 5 days. There's like no water. People were lining up begging, and you had like 8,000 people going without food and water. And it was like they lost everything. They've lost their passport. That like they've already lost everything. And then to be at the camp and the little bit you do have, you know, like people are in these tents. There's like 16 people in these tents, you know, and they're already like, it's so dense. You go in there and there's so much, everyone's stressed, you know, like everyone is like not necessarily living their full, like they're not fully always there because they're like stressed out. They're always looking for their next meal. They're always like, so you can't fully be your full personality when you're out there. And it was just so sad to see that and to go to work and
Just there's
every
this
day.
sense of like vulnerability at all times, right?
Yeah. And then when, especially when you have to go lose all your things again for the second time after a fire, like the whole camp, like that was home to, like, even if it ate like 15,000 people, like just gone, all their stuff, like everything they thought that they did have, they had to leave again. So it's just like, it's really like, it's tough. And like, I always applaud their strength and their faith and their hope to like keep going, and their lives are gonna get better. And yeah, I remember just feeling so, trying to do my part, but knowing that I'm just trying to inspire people to
Keep
go
pushing
out
through.
and keep pushing through and give them bring smiles to their face, and just give them something, distract them for a couple hours of their day where you can like just make their day a bit better.
So I gotta ask, when you're in this place and you're trying to teach these people how to farm, essentially, you're trying to teach them how to grow their own food, and you're also talking about, we kind of talked together about how so incredibly packed these places are. How do they have space to grow anything?
Yeah, that's like growing your own food, or growing like any of your own food or consumption, or just seeing a plant grow from being small to adult form, or you're just kind of giving that hope to yourself too. It's very therapeutic, where people are just like caring for something else, you know? And it brings a lot of peace to these people. And a lot of these people, it reminds them of back home because they've already like been farmers, or these people were lawyers, teachers, bankers, you know, engineers, a lot of these people, construction workers, crane workers. And like you wouldn't, you like, a lot of these people, you hear their background story and they're just like me and you, like highly educated people, you know. And it's like really sad that like what happens of like we have these judgment of these people are just poor or like they are not educated, when in their countries, they're bankers, like entrepreneurs. And when you have this terrorist group be like, oh, I'm gonna like kidnap your child, or they'll take their child and like give me everything you have, or else I'm gonna shoot your child in front of you, or I'm gonna drop you from a 3-story floor and like I don't want to say it, but like rape your wife, or all these different things that they use against them to hold. And then you're stuck giving everything that you have and having to flee your country because you just want your kids to live in a safer place. So you'll go from Turkey to try to get to Europe on a rubber dinghy and like leave your past behind you and get somewhere safe, And
I think that's really
yeah,
important. The point you made to kind of double down on is that these people aren't just poor people that haven't worked hard enough or didn't have the means to, I don't know, save themselves in a better way or anything like that. Like they're just like anyone that is potentially listening to this, right? Like you said, bankers, lawyers, and a lot of people that might be listening to this, or people that might be listening, or people that might be living in like Canada or the United States might be thinking, oh, I don't have to deal with that. Well, yeah, like good for you. You don't have to deal with that. But like you could have magically been born on a different part of the planet and you would have had to deal with those things. It could have easily been you. And I don't think that we're immune here in North America to those kind of things. I think that like I'm pretty sure right now, like banks are collapsing like in droves. There's currently a incredible financial crisis where a bunch of people are going to the banks and asking for their money, and it's just causing all kinds of chaos. And so it's like, what happens when everything goes just ass up?
south,
And yeah, exactly. And then
belly flop.
yeah, and then what? You don't have money and there's civil unrest and you don't know how to get food and all the supply chains are messed up. Like we saw a glimpse of what could happen with COVID. And so like it's just it's amazing to me that people don't realize their vulnerability regardless of where they are on the planet.
Yeah. Like we even saw it with Ukraine, like Ukraine are people of white color, And you don't even have to go that far, There's like in Europe, like Bosnia, right near Croatia, there was huge genocides in the 90s, Like people remember that stuff. And that's like really close to home, Or yeah, I feel like we're not vulnerable. Like we think we're immune, like you're saying. To echo what you're saying is, yeah, we think we live this super safe life, and these people are just trying to have this safe environment to go to, where we've been migrating. It's what we've been doing as humans, is been migrating for the time from the day of our existence. We've been moving around,
moving away from one threat after another one.
yeah.
And if you get the opportunity to be born and die in one place, you're a very fortunate individual.
And
yeah, go ahead.
just also, a lot of these people don't want to leave their home country. We have all these like people, they think that, oh, they want to leave. A lot of these people are happy, they don't have these stresses that we have out west, in the Western world of like financial stress. A lot of these people are like happy with what they have back home, and they're really very content people, where I feel like, to echo into what the conversation we were saying before, is like we're always constantly wanting more and always wanting more and more, and we're kind of like spiraling into never being happy and falling into these depression, where I feel like every time I've traveled, I've never seen that much depression that we have like we have out in Canada, or like this, like,
Yeah, the
yeah.
whole keeping up with the Joneses, capitalism, if you're going to be successful, it's going to be the number in your bank account that's going to make you successful, that kind of thing. So you're saying you're not really seeing that in these other countries?
No, not at all. No one's like on the rat race scene, like people generally smile more. Like they smile more, they're laughing more. So why would they want to leave, you know? Like a lot of these people I was talking to is like, oh, America is like a huge balloon, you know? And like this American dream, it's full of just helium. It's like a big balloon, and then you pop it, and there's nothing inside of it. So that's how it was explained by a person to me the other day in Iraq. He's like, no one really wants to go to America here anymore.
That's interesting. That's a really good analogy. I like that. It's like a balloon of nothing. It looks all shiny and then it just gets one little needle and there it goes. And it
Yeah.
seems like that's entirely possible. I mean, if the sun farts big enough and sends out a solar flare, right?
Yeah.
So when you were at this Moria camp, because you've been to Iraq, you've been to Jordan, some people might think that like, wow, that's crazy. Those are dangerous places, but you're most scared for your life in your moment in your life was in Greece.
Yeah, I was telling you the story about how I got attacked by 30 Greek mobsters and they fully attacked my car, and there's like 40 of them just like attacking us. Like we're just there's a lot of tension on the island. You can feel it. You'd go outside, everyone was like, it was kind of eerie as everyone was quiet. The whole city kind of shut down. And so me and my friend were going to leave this small part of Mytilene, and we were gonna go for a drive and go see a different part of the island. And we are coming out of the rental place, and we're seeing two manifestation. We're seeing like one big one that is like super left wing, and people are just kind of like, just like, it happens like on the weekend, and like every weekend during that time the tensions were really high. And we're like, you know what, we don't want to go there, we're just going to go through another part of town. There's just kind of two exits to the town. So as we're approaching to the next exit, to the roundabout, we had to slow down, and all these right-wing fascist people started like seeing that we weren't from Greece. So they started like, at first they were just like hitting the car, showing that we weren't welcome, and then it really fastly got like
It escalated.
really aggressive. Yeah, it escalated really quickly to like them throwing chains and rocks at us and breaking all the windows. And we just like, we were trying to like end up like, our car stalled a couple times too, and there's cars in front of us, cars in back of us, but they were just like, we were really targeted. And because of the car rental, they knew we weren't from Greece. So
did you get insurance on your rental?
we did, but they didn't care. They're like, this is not insured for this kind of stuff. So
Jesus.
They totaled the car. They ended up totaling the car. One guy, like, once they like punched, they got to us pretty quickly, and they're just like punching us in the face. They try to grab me out of the car, unbuckle me. We're like hitting me in the face. And then one guy took a glass piece of shard trying to stab my friend in the neck.
Jesus Christ.
And we were both holding the guy's hand back. And thankfully there was some locals that were kind of like calming them down. And then you can see this like on this video's on YouTube. Like the chain is like, the car is like fully like we were just in full shock. I didn't leave my house for like 3 days. I was like thinking about cutting my hair. I had dreads at that point, and I was just like, oh man, like I could be seriously targeted again, you know, like. And yeah, we got really lucky that they weren't trying to kill us, or they were trying to really hurt us and make us feel like we're not welcome. And then after that, after that happened, these same mobsters or like fascist people were starting to burn things down. So they started burning NGOs down. Like that same NGO that I was working for, they burnt down the school. They were attacking NGO residents,
What's NGO?
a non-governmental
Okay.
organization.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, they were really out. So they were paying for everyone, for all volunteers to leave the island. It was getting that bad that they were just like, it wasn't safe. Like, it wasn't
Yeah,
safe for
I think that's an
anybody.
understatement.
Yeah, it was like, they were really like, they were just trying to get NGOs to stop being on the island, you know?
Hmm.
And I left for about a week and then I came back because that fire happened right after, like, and then that right after, like a couple days right after, accidental fire that happened and
So sorry, the
burnt
fire
things.
happened after you got
Like,
attacked?
yeah, like a couple days after I got attacked, like a bunch of organizations were like, there's like about 40 to 50 organizations there, and they were just shipping people off the island because it came to the point there didn't want to be any liabilities for the NGOs, for the organizations, until it calmed down. And then I guess after a month, people started getting arrested, and like I'm still going to court for my car and stuff, and people like off the video, they started recognizing people and bringing people to court.
So
So I just got an email
what
about that.
what video actually? So who took a video?
The people that were attacking me, and then they posted it on social media, like
So there's video
people
of
like
you getting punched in the face.
of the whole thing, like the car, them,
Jesus.
like, yeah. I forgot to send that to you. I'll send that to you right after. I'll send you the link.
Okay.
And
And
yeah,
if anyone listening to this wants to watch you get your ass beat and nearly die, where do they find that?
it's somewhere on YouTube. If you type in like Lesbos car attack, and you'll find it
Lesfos,
easily.
so Lesfos. Is that?
Lesbos.
Oh, okay.
It's Lesbos.
Lesvos then.
West. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Car attack. Oh, great. Let's
Yeah.
watch Derek get his ass whooped and nearly die. That's great. It's awesome.
Yeah. No.
Jesus,
Yeah,
that's
but
insane.
yeah, people, like, the thing is, like, when the island's like 70,000 people and then you add an extra 30,000 in refugees, like in 2015, a lot of people were like opening arms to it. Like a lot of people, when like what created that tension was that Turkey, the EU, basically wasn't paying Turkey what they wanted, and or what they promised that they would pay. So basically, Turkey has this like open policy where they'll bring in refugees, and then so that they know that the refugees end game is Europe. So in 2015, when there's refugees all over Europe, they're like, oh, we're gonna make sure that this doesn't happen. So they were paying Turkey to keep refugees inside through their navy like army. It was like a big game of catch and release, you know. They catch them trying to go to Greece, then they would take them and then they would bring them back, and then they would have to spend 30 days in jail, and then they can try again. So that's what was happening. And then Turkey was like, we're just gonna open the border to Greece, Albania, and all these like bordering countries that touch Turkey and Europe. And they're like, oh, for 3 days, we're gonna just not do our work at the border. So people took it in their own hands to, like, the Greek people were taking it in their own hands, like shooting rubber dinghies out, you know, like shooting them when they were on shore, not letting them go. And like you see this video, this video of this like lady, like being on the shore and everyone just like calling your names while her child is like kind of drowning, and they just watch her drown with her child and they don't give a fuck. Sorry for my
Jesus.
language. And like it was just really, it's like it's hell on earth, you know, this refugee camp. Like you go into refugee camps in the Middle East and it's like you don't see this. It's like modern day, like these concentration camps are like modern day like concentration camps, you know.
So hang on, before we get too far away from this,
Yeah.
there's a system in place for when people come across to Greece illegally that the government uses their resources to, like you said, put them in jail or whatever. And they have a system to keep people from illegally immigrating, right? And you said for a 3-day stretch, they basically announced that they were like, yeah, we're not going to do our job.
Yeah, then so what they were getting in 3 months as refugees on the border, they were getting in one day. So they were getting about like 15 to 2,000 refugees a day. So they were like getting 6,000 refugees instead of like
So what was the point of
instead
that?
of
Why did they just say, yeah, we're going to just not stop people from coming in? And like how do they
because
announce that?
they're announcing that because the EU wasn't paying Turkey what they wanted. And Turkey was like had the upper hand of like, oh well, we have all these refugees. You want us to be like 2015? So we'll make it like 2015. And they just like
Oh,
lift
okay.
the cover, they lift like the rug on like the problem under the cover, you know? Like
Right. So
they
it's not the Greek government that deals with them. It's the Turkish government that keeps them from illegally leaving.
Yeah, because if they're in like Greek government hands, then they're like seeking asylum
Hmm.
into Greece. So if you have the Turkish Navy stopping them, then it's their problem.
So basically then there was a situation where Turkey is in not a situation, I'm sure it's still this way, that Turkey is the gatekeeper for these
Yeah,
refugees, and they were promised an amount of money from Europe and they weren't getting that amount of money. And so because they weren't getting the money they were promised, they were like, you want us to be gatekeepers? Guess what? We're not going to be gatekeepers anymore. Let's see what happens. And then
exactly. And
1,500 to
then that
2,000
puts
people a day started just going over to Greece.
yeah, and then you have like these famous like these pictures that were happening where the Greek people were like stripping them naked and then sending them back to Turkey.
Jesus.
Like yeah, and like it was just messed up. Like that whole week was just like crazy. And like COVID was just popping off as well at the same time, you know, like no one knew what COVID was. Everyone wasn't really sure what COVID was, and like it was just like full. This was like yeah, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, that's peak amount of chaos there. Holy hell.
Yeah,
Okay, so
and then
you worked with them there, nearly died. So that's good that you didn't, so that you could
yeah, yeah,
continue spreading the
the,
love. And you said you were in
yeah,
Iraq and Jordan. Which one were you? You were in Iraq recently. You were already in Jordan.
yeah. So yeah, I ended up last winter. This is where greening the streets happened. I spent my whole year when I came back from Greece. I was like, oh, like I want to start a business with my garlic company, and then through that I could fundraise money to end up starting gardens in refugee camps. So I spent like maybe less than a year trying to like fundraise money and make money farming, and also yeah, farming and like finding an organization that would be interested in wanting to collaborate on a project where we would like have 300 trees or families where I can teach farming, and also start a farm with refugees. That was like the goal that I was having. And I would bring seeds from Canada, organic seeds from Canada, and bring it to local farmers that were like wanting to transition to like organic seeds or just have a bigger selection in seed varieties, because a lot of what the seed varieties in Jordan or in the Middle East is like very like they're really just like, oh, this type of tomato, oh, this type of eggplant, and then that's kind of it. So I was trying to bring in seed varieties to farmers, refugees, and so that people can feed themselves, through either rooftop gardening, or if they had access to a piece of land close to the refugee camp. So this was a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan. These were like third to fourth three generation refugee camps, the Gaza, it's called Jerash refugee camp, but these are Gazans from the West Bank, from Palestine, from the 6-Day War. So they've been there since 1967, since the 6-Day War. And yeah, they live on like $1.25 a day. These Palestinian refugees.
So these people came from Palestine, and
yeah,
there was a 6-Day War there that moved them into Jordan.
Yeah, so they were held at like gunpoint through the Israeli government when there was the 6-Day War. Israel attacked. For people that don't know what the 6-Day War is, Israel declared war against Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. And they just demolished them in literally 24 hours. And then after they had completely demolished all the airports in every of those countries in like 4 hours. And then there was a lot of battling for land for the extra like 6 days. And then a lot of what happened was that because before the Gaza Strip was Palestine, it ended up being like ruled by Egypt, and then the West Bank was like ruled by Jordan. This was pre-67 and pre-48 Nakba, which is 1948, when right after the Second World War, like England gave land to Jews, and they're like, oh, we're going to go back to what was Jerusalem at the time, or Palestine. And they took that land, and then they gave the English gave the land to the Jews to create their own government and their own government there. And then they pushed out a bunch of little by little, they were encroaching on Palestinian territory and making it smaller and smaller every year. And then that's when the 6-Day War happened in 67.
And so this 6-Day War pushed these Palestinians into Jordan. And you said that they were third generation, like you're teaching people that have been there for 3 generations as refugees?
Yeah, exactly. So this refugee camp, anyone that's 55 years old in that refugee camp was born in that refugee camp. Jesus. And hasn't left that camp, or it's just like they're not allowed to vote in Jordan. They have 0 votes. They would have to pay the same tuition as if me or you wanted to go to Jordan to study. And there's about 40,000 people that live in this refugee camp.
Now, is it hard to become a Jordan citizen?
You can't become a citizen if your parents aren't Jordanian. You can't just like, Canada has like this thing where you can either be like, you can be a permanent residency there, but you'll never be Jordanian. Like they don't give like citizenship like we do in Canada. Like
Huh.
none of the Middle Eastern countries do that.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know Switzerland, you can get a citizenship, and you can get a citizenship in the United States, obviously. I'm sure you can in some other
And
European countries.
yeah, for sure. Like even if I was like married to like a Jordanian, I wouldn't, my kid would be Jordanian, but me physically, I wouldn't be Jordanian, you know, or
You can't
Iraqi
even get it through
or
marriage.
yeah,
That's crazy. That's so interesting. I did
yeah,
not know that. And you said there was 1,400 people in this camp you were at in Jordan?
40,000.
40,000. That's a lot more.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
40,000 that
yeah.
live. Yeah.
So did they have more space, physical space here than in Moria?
I'm not sure about the surface, but this is about a kilometer squared. Like, yeah, 1,000 square meters.
A kilometer squared for 40,000 people.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a concrete jungle.
That's
And yeah,
not a lot of space, bro.
no, it's not a lot of space at all. Yeah, it's real like the thing they like winters there are really cold too. They're really high up in the mountains and all their houses are made out of bricks. There's no insulation. And these people have like makeshift like barrel like oil barrel cans that they turn into like rocket stoves in their house, and like they'll gather like wood that they've found because you're not allowed cutting trees in that area, thank god, because you wouldn't have any forest there. But yeah, like imagine making like $1.25 US. Like a lot of people face malnutrition, and that's why my goal is to go there and try as much as possible grow organic food, you know, like urban gardening in this, because a lot of this camp's went from emergency tents to mud houses to brick houses to like it's like it has phases, you know.
Well, when it's been around
Basically,
for 3 generations, they're going to be doing some
yeah,
development.
yeah, like people like collect all their money and they try buying cars or they inherited from their grandfather. Like everyone, like it's very common to have like 9 people living in a house, you know, like 9 to 12 people. It's very common there.
And you say house, and people in their mind, they're listening to this in
Like
Canada.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
like, oh
like a
yeah, a
Canadian
house.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like two
yeah, like
bathrooms, a
and
basement, and upstairs.
yeah,
Yeah, no. You're
yeah.
talking about a
No, that's
fucking
not.
brick
But
box. That's what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And they'll try to go vertical as much as possible, as like you're basically working to buy more bricks so that you're like can house your kids if they get married, and then they can live upstairs, and then you can continue like living there, because the chances of you as a Palestinian like seeking asylum to other countries is very little, you know.
Can these people, this
um
is an odd question, but can these people take advantage of like the New Zealand thing where they can just go and like work in New Zealand?
no, like that's just strictly towards like Canadians, and also like other like countries, like it like countries basically come up together and have these like agreements that oh a certain population of my population could go work
Mm-hmm.
here and vice versa, and it's all these like trades. Oh, like it's funny because the US it gets exempt from all these working holiday visas. Like I think Canada it could work in 30 countries.
Yeah, I know there's one for the Switzerland because I was looking at that at one point, and you're talking about this one in New Zealand. I've heard of people talk about it in Australia, and I just wanted to touch
Yeah,
on that because I thought it was an interesting
yeah.
kind of point while we're discussing these people that have fled their country because of a war and they've stayed in this refugee camp that's a kilometer squared with 40,000 people for 3 generations, and they have like no opportunity to go anywhere. They have no options. They're out of options. They have no money. They're living on, like you said, I think $1.20 a day or something like that.
And
And I'm just
those,
thinking that like these people, whoever's listening to this, if you're between the ages of 18 and 35, like you just said, you can just go to 30 different countries in the world and work and experience different cultures and make money. And that's not an option that other people have in the world.
Yeah. And your passport too, you know, like we have like a really good passport relative to a lot of different countries, you know, and like some passports, like like your passport is like everything to like some passports are so bad that you can't even go to countries without having this like huge, like if you don't have like $20,000 in your bank account, you can't even go to this country because they think you're gonna just stay there, or they'll just like be super like racial profile you for the country that you're coming from, you know?
That's super
And
interesting. I never thought about it that way. I never thought about like the value of the Canadian passport. I never thought that it held a special value above others. I thought a passport was a passport.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So there's like really bad passports that you can have, and then like Iraqi passport, let's say, Pakistani passport. There's like certain passports, or like a Somalia passport, like you're just like, or a Iran passport, where like your government just doesn't get along with other governments or Western governments, and because maybe you don't even really, your values don't align with your government's past, like government's dictatorship or anything, but that's still, as a citizen, you're held on to that, you know, like you're held captive to what your government is doing, you know?
Yeah, and I would like to just kind of state the obvious while we're on this subject, and you're talking about these people
Yeah.
that have these Iraqi passports and stuff, and it's based on the lottery of their birth.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear here, listener, they were unfortunate to be born in the wrong part of the planet. So if you aren't born in one of those places, you should just, thank the universe for a second that you're Canadian or American or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in Jordan. You're in this 40,000 person, 1 kilometer squared refugee camp. And you were talking about getting like planting trees, like fruit trees.
Yes. Yeah, fruit trees. So there's like 300. Yeah, let's see if my phone's gonna die. Just make sure that doesn't happen.
You want to take a second to get a charger?
Yeah. I'm just a little worried that my phone's it's looking like it's acting up. Oh yeah, I caught it right on the river.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I caught it at 1%.
Nice.
All right. So yeah, where was I? Sorry. Yeah,
You're
I guess
talking
you
about
can
the
edit
trees.
this. Yeah, so I've been wanting to wait, can we
Do what you
since
gotta
we're
do,
all
bro.
like,
Yeah.
I just need to pee real quick
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get into this, you're talking about the trees and the fruit trees for this refugee camp. I just wanted, because I was just thinking after a little bathroom break there, I was just thinking about
Yeah.
like after the pandemic and everything, I had a lot of not awesome things to think and say about Canada, because I really don't love a lot of the things that were done to deal with the pandemic and the way it was approached and whatever. With that said, like I've said earlier on, I try to remove judgment, and I try to think about if I was in the positions of power, if I was whatever, the prime minister or premiers or any kind of person in power that had to make any decision, I might have made a shitty decision too. I might have made a worse decision. Who am I to say? I'm no freaking expert on any of this shit. But with that said, it's just kind of interesting to think about, like, after having this conversation with you, I just, in my mind, the value of my passport, like I know where my passport is in my house, and I'm just envisioning it physically, and the value of that object in my mind has just increased tenfold. Like I seriously used to look at that and be like, oh, this stupid controlling bullshit that I have to show this piece of paper to be able to travel the world or whatever. And it's like, no, that's a ticket to opportunity. And I really should be thinking about it that way. And I really should be recognizing that, yeah, maybe the current government, maybe Justin Trudeau isn't an awesome prime minister. Maybe he's not awesome. And maybe the current state of our government is not great. But that does not mean Canada is shit. There is still
Yeah.
a lot of really good value of just living in Canada and being Canadian. So I just wanted to kind of make that statement before we moved on. A little bit of a
Yeah, for sure.
realization. So trees, fruit trees.
Yeah, fruit trees. So yeah, basically, yeah, it's a really good point because we've been, I guess, a lot of people like don't scope out,
Mm-hmm.
we're not zooming out like eagles are, we're just kind of in our everyday life, just looking at our everyday life and seeing like, oh, inflation, no. But if you actually go out, like we're so blessed and we're so blessed to be Canadian. And if we appreciate our everyday life, like you would like, or just be grateful for everything,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the lack of gratitude as citizen has like made us like I don't know, just if we had more of it, we'd be in a different place, I think.
I totally agree. And I think that all ties into what we were talking about before with people being soft, which I still intend on getting to, and what we were talking about before with like people not sharing their deeper stories as much with each other, people being too held into their own little worlds and having blinders on and not being so open to other people. I think it's kind of all
Yeah.
one big picture of those issues intertwined. So you're in Jordan, 40,000 people, kilometer squared, trying to get some people fruit trees like a fucking
Yeah,
saint.
yeah, so I'm trying to do that. It's always been like a dream of mine for a while. So to do it also with like no big organization and trying to do it independent, which is like, because a lot of people or a lot of organizations are like having to boast all these numbers, or they can't do this because it doesn't look good, or they have people that are just kind of like having to make everything look so fancy in order to get money because they're trying to please their donors or please their beneficiaries. So to do it independent for me was a very important, and to team up with local organization instead of approaching a bigger organization that would just think of me as like a small fish, and it's more like impactful going to local organizations that are actually on the floor, on the front line, and making that impact and adding additions to their pot. So for me, it was really important to do that. So,
Can I
and I have a
interject for a
very
second
small,
here? I just
yeah.
want to understand better. So what you're currently talking about, when you're going to these places, you're finding local organizations that are already trying to do what you do, or they're just already involved with the refugee
They're
camp?
already involved. Yeah, they're already involved. They're a lot smaller than bigger organizations, Like there's bigger organizations like that are huge, in the aid like world. There's GIZ, and like United, what's it called? Norwegian Refugee Council, and there's just like American Aid. There's these, or like World Vision, or like you have all these like huge like organizations that have like they're in every country in the world, they're almost in, or they're in like 150 countries. So I'm like really trying to like dial in to an organization that's grassroots, that's small, that has less of a footprint, that I can team up, that are maybe more on my level. I can talk to someone right away. We can collaborate faster than if you have to go and talk to an executive director that has to talk to someone that has to talk to someone to just get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
So seeking out small
Something a
local organizing.
little less bureaucratic.
Yeah, exactly.
So I do want to get through to what you're actually doing. I'm thinking like if there's someone else that was like, I want to do what Derek's doing. Like you don't just get a plane ticket to Jordan and go knock on the refugee camp door, right? Like how do you like
That's
who
what
do
I
you
did.
what? Seriously?
Yeah, like I had a plane ticket, and I was just like did a lot of like the foundation work, like, oh, like talk to organization, who wants to collaborate, like who wouldn't collaborate, and just like finding an organization that aligns with what I want to do, you know.
So you
Um,
literally showed up, knocked on the door, and were like,
with a bunch of seeds, like, and money and fundraise money, and then found people that wanted to collaborate and wanted to work together and wanted to make a difference because they're so passionate about it. You'll find people that have that seed. Sorry, burp.
no, it's all good. And I love that. I love this. This is perfect because I was like, okay, if someone wants to actually do this, how do they do it? And the fact that you're like your strategy, you're currently doing it, like you're really genuinely making a difference from what it sounds like. And the fact that your strategy was literally go do it. Like that was it. You weren't
Yeah.
and I just point that out because I'm the kind of individual that I just research the shit out of stuff like too much. Like I've had way too many projects in my life where I'm like Googling how to do stuff on the project. I'm like looking at how do I make this happen? How do I do that or whatever? And then I never even fucking do the project. I never even actually take the first step. I just learned a bunch about how to do it. I've done that way too many times. Not proud of it, but I've done it a lot.
Yeah.
And you're just like, no. Plane ticket to Jordan, showing up with some seeds and some cash. Let's make some shit happen. That's freaking awesome. So
Yeah, because that like, if you, I feel like there's like an art to going there and to finding out what's actually happening on the ground, you know. And you don't know what's happening on the ground until you show up. Like you can fairy tale every email that you ever want to until you show up, and then it's not anything that you thought it was going to be, like, you know. Especially if you don't have any background in like international aid, you don't have your bachelor's in international aid, and you want to make a difference, go show up, and there's hands on the floor waiting for you, and pick the country that really suits you, that you have passion towards, or that you know. Like for me, why I choose the Middle East is that it's like it's a desert, you know. Like it's the first people that are gonna be another wave of climate refugees when we have average like temperatures of 50 Celsius. Like they're not gonna come knocking, like they're like, all these countries are fighting desertification, and it's refugees that are at the forefront of that, you know.
yeah. So
And
while we're on this, I wanted to get to this
yeah,
later,
sorry.
but while on
Yeah,
this,
continue.
the soft people, we talked about people getting too soft. And I think that's happening a lot in first world countries in North America in particular. And people seem to be, in my eyes, like making up problems that aren't real problems. They're finding things to be mad about that aren't real things to be mad about. They're acting like there's these catastrophes that aren't really there, that you just gotta, like, they're not real problems. Like these people are in an apartment or living in their house with their parents or whatever, and they're on this phone that slaves have suffered somewhere to make the battery on it, and they're sitting there tweeting or posting on social media about some bullshit that is not actually a real problem. Or they're like hashtag stand with Ukraine or some shit, and they don't actually know anything about the war going on. Like at no point have I ever made any claim about Ukraine or the war in Ukraine with Russia and everything. Like, oh, that's so awful. What Russia's doing, or isn't Ukraine corrupt? Don't they have a lot of corruption? No, I'm not going to. I have no intention of saying any statements in any direction on any of that, because it's an incredibly complicated subject, and I don't know dog shit about it. And I'm certainly not going to just take only information from mainstream media and construct an opinion around that. And so it's astonishing to me that there's these people that are making these statements that I'm sure you know what virtue signaling is. Do you know what?
No, what's virtue signaling?
Yeah. So virtue signaling is this new term that had to be invented. Blows my mind. That you're making statements, typically on social media or however you want to, that is signaling to people that you're virtuous. So you're making statements like, I stand with the Ukrainian people, right? And it's like, Okay, all you're doing is saying, I'm,
Acknowledging.
yeah, you're just saying, acknowledge me. You're just saying, I'm special because I'm standing with the Ukrainian people. That's all you're doing. You making those statements is not helping people in Ukraine. Are you sending someone money that like lost their house and they need to pay for food? Did you find someone that lived in Ukraine and shit happened to them and they're struggling to find food and you fucking Venmoed them some cash so that they could pay for dinner? Like, that's, you're helping, but don't tweet about that shit, because just do it for the good of your heart. You don't need to get recognition for that
Yeah.
kind of shit, right? And so
Just.
it's like a big, I know I'm kind of rambling on here, but I'm trying to like paint the full picture of kind of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's there's just so many people in the world right now that are doing this kind of shit. They're virtue signaling, they're acting like they're contributing in some way, and they're fucking not. And they're having opinions about shit that just doesn't make any sense on why they would have such a strong opinion when you know they have limited information, or they haven't actually had their boots on the ground, or they haven't actually taken the time to consider all sides. And they're not only are they not making a difference, they're just doing nothing constructive. They're providing no help to anyone. And then I start talking to someone like you, and I'm like, okay, this fucking guy is making shit happen. This guy is doing something significant. This guy is helping people in a very serious, very practical way. Like, I think about donating. If someday I had ridiculous amounts of money and I was going to do some philanthropy and I wanted to donate money to something, I would find people like you and I would be like, hey, Derek, how much money do you need for fruit trees, or how much money do you need for travel to these
Mm-hmm.
places, or seeds or something? Someone that's doing a real thing to help real people, and I would invest in that, not some company where people are doing question mark. So I think what I'm looking to kind of to send this back your way and get your words on all of this is, what are those people like in my mind, as you could probably tell by my demeanor and the way I'm talking, those people that are in this category of virtue signaling and not doing a lick of good are infuriating to me. How do those people make you feel? What is your take on those people and where their heads at, and how and what they could be doing differently? I don't know, whatever, whichever direction you want to take it.
I would go back onto what you were saying before. Well, you're kind of saying that people, like you were talking about soft people, and I just wanted to say that I think that every like everyone's going through something that we don't know, and also, yeah, everyone's going through something that they don't know, and you can't measure people's pain, you know. So I just want to like basically say that I think emotions can trick you into anything, but at the same time those emotions are true to you at that time, you know. And to we're all trying to become better people, hopefully, and that's how I would approach kind of what you're going to. And to I think people, it's like not kind of pushing them down, because those people actually care, actually having a conversation about it, where I think is very important. If you get like the more people that are talking about it, the more there's the more clout, or the more like the thing that I also don't like necessarily too is that in like aid work, it's like the next, what's the big next catastrophes getting all that money, you know? So like all the money that was happening in Syria or in Libya or Sudan is all going to Ukraine now. And when there's a other huge like catastrophe or war, all that money that was getting funneled into Ukraine is not getting into Ukraine anymore. It's going to that next thing. And it's just kind of like, or it's going back to Yemen, you know? And like, so I don't wanna like hate on those people, because like obviously they're just either learning about it for the first time, and we're all are like at least acknowledging that there's a problem, you know? Like you can live your whole day on social media and post something that also be like, oh, I'm having chicken for dinner, and I'm gonna post a picture, you know, of it, and at least like that tweet, someone reads about it, someone's not aware, they go in, read about it, you know. So like I won't hate on that 100%, because maybe that's their way of even contributing, is that, prayer, like people actually go out and pray, people
Hmm.
stop praying, and praying is like a vibrational frequency that people can actually send their energy and their good vibes or their actual thoughts. If you're saying that you're praying towards something and then not praying about it, then like shame on you. But
Yeah, I think it's important to note so that my words don't get misconstrued. I said it infuriates me. I'm not mad at these people like they're bad people. I'm not like you're stupid. I want to be very clear about that. I don't think they're stupid people. I'm not mad at them. I'm just standing at it from a position where I can see how little they're actually doing, and I can also understand the people like you exist. And I'm like, if you want, like, it, to me, I see that with their actions, they're like, I have this heart where I want to help people. And I'm like, okay, but you're not. Like, you got to do something different. You know what I mean? Like, if you really want to go help people, you can. And
it's
there's tons
scary
of
though.
opportunity. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying people got to go to fucking Jordan like you nutbag. Jesus, that's insane.
No,
No.
but I'm just saying that most people don't know where to start, and just like, or they're really don't have someone behind them giving them that first push,
Yeah.
or they're like, or they're still stuck like, oh, am I gonna give up everything? Give up an apartment, give up like all these different things just to live a nomadic life and go help these people, and then try to make, like, I've always done it on my own dollar,
Hmm.
like I've never, only now after 4 years of doing it, I'm getting like a little bit of money through a friend that actually funneled me into a project after 4 years of spending 6 months, or 6 to 4 months a year volunteering and just going out there and giving my knowledge and doing it out of my heart,
Hmm.
and not expecting. And also what I'm saying too is like, I also don't see myself like I'm making a huge difference, because it's, for me, it's not about necessarily making a difference. It's about bringing a smile to these people's faces, and maybe they're
Isn't that the same thing?
gonna, yeah, I get, like, just
That's
like,
making a difference,
hopefully
man.
I make
You add one smile to the world, you've made a difference.
yeah,
And like,
one tree at a time.
yeah, exactly. Not only one smile, like you're feeding people. You're literally teaching a man to fish, right? Like, I mean,
And then, yeah,
you're
like,
not
not
teaching,
fit
you're not,
I
yeah, right? Like the teach a man to fish, you feed him for a
ex-
lifetime, obviously, right? So you're teaching these
exactly.
people to fish, not literally, but
But
figuratively.
yeah,
And
if they had water, I'm sure they would be fishing.
yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, that you were talking about funding. I was going to ask about that too. Where I got a two-part question. Where you said you raised a little bit of funds for this Jordan project. You had, when you went to knock on the door, you had a little bit of fundraising. And my second question is, if someone wanted to support Derek in his endeavors to give people seeds and fruit trees, how would they get you funding?
You can, like, I guess, like, my email, and we could chit chat through email or Instagram, and or Facebook or anything. Mostly, yeah, through that. And then I would, at that point, I'd be like, oh, my, like, what's my next project,
Hmm.
And then I'm going in June right now to finish that project in Jordan for that refugee camp. So I'll be like spending money on fruit trees, spending money on containers so people have more greener space. So for sure, people can reach me at that, and it's a life goal for me. I'll be doing this for my whole life.
How
Like,
old are you,
this is up
Derek?
28.
Jeez,
20,
that's awesome, man.
yeah.
So where did you get the original funding? You just said a buddy funded you for this?
Originally, I like
No,
originally for this
originally, I think you said it was yourself.
it's
Like
always
you're,
on my, yeah,
yeah.
it's always been my own money. Last year I did a huge like GoFundMe where I where I fundraised like $7,000, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that, yeah, so I could make a big or small difference. For me, a small difference with a lot of like with a small amount of cash, you know.
Hmm.
Like I'm not paying myself, I'm not paying people. I'm just going out there and buying the raw material and making it happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, so that's pretty noble. I think a lot of what people attract, like they're always like, oh, this is so cool, you don't pay yourself, you're and like for I like try to make sure that all my expenses are covered when I leave Canada, or that I don't have any overhead when I leave, you know.
Hmm.
So like if I'm leasing an apartment, I have someone living at my apartment. I don't have like a cell phone bill that keeps coming in every month. And like I don't my car insurance paid for the year. I like give it to like send it to my sister. She can use it, or I selling my stuff so that I can go for a bit longer. And that's how I go, you know.
So you
That's
mentioned
how I
cell phone bill. That kind of reminded me, these people in these refugee camps that like still have cell phones based on like all the stuff we talked about earlier on how they become refugees and how everything ends up happening. Is there Wi-Fi in refugee camps?
like it's like basically like there's internet. People buy cell phone plans, you know. Like Canada is like the most expensive place in the world to get a cell phone. Like I just coming back from Iraq, where like to get unlimited everything cost you less than $15, you know, unlimited talking, unlimited texting, unlimited internet plan, like for $15, where in Canada, if you wanted that same plan, it costs you $120
Jesus.
or like $110. Like everything's and that's like for almost all of the world, is that we have the highest paying company bills. Like we should be really going like striking against these cell phone companies. Like I talk about inflation, these people are making the most money on us, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's coercion.
Well, I don't know. We got a really good passport. We should maybe let it slide. Just take the hit on the cell phone
Nah,
bill.
nah.
No. Okay. Yeah,
We
right.
still need to live, man.
Yeah, let's rise up. Rise up against the cell
Yeah.
companies. Curse you, Kudo. Sorry, Kudo. I shouldn't have named you. You're my company. I love you. You guys are great. Anyways, you're bringing these trees to Jordan, and so where do you get the trees? Like, how do you get trees there? Like, you can walk in with a pocket full of seeds, but how do you get
Not a
trees?
pocket. I'm going with like
I know.
suitcases
Yeah,
full.
I'm sure you got a lot of
Yeah.
seeds. It was more of a metaphor. You can't really put a
Yeah.
tree in your
Yeah.
pocket. You can't put a tree in a suitcase. Maybe you could if it's a small enough tree, but my point is,
Yeah.
where are you getting the trees?
Mostly I'm dealing with local tree nurseries that are in the region. They're already adapted to the climate, and it's basically you already know what they eat. You go to those trees, you're like, oh, and I also choose what the family wants, you know, like, oh, this is family, what kind of fruit trees do you want? And then I'll be like, okay, I'll get that for you, you know?
Hmm.
And then it's more like I'm not I'm not saying, here, do you want this? I'm asking them what kind of fruit trees do you want, you know. I already know what kind of seeds, what like annuals, I know what they kind of eat, their diet. So that's what I'm bringing tailored seeds that are what they eat every day, you know.
Hmm.
And for the trees, I'm asking the families, oh, what do you want? Peach trees, you want cherry, you want apple, you want olive tree, what do you want? And I'm getting it like already fruiting, you know, so that they don't have to wait 7 years. They don't have 7 years to water this tree. I'm giving it to them where it's ready to fruit and ready to go. Ready, like if it's not this season, it's next season that it's like fruiting.
And do this refugee camp in Jordan, for example, do they struggle to get water like the one in Moria did, or do they
Yeah,
have?
it's even more stressful. Like water is even more like intense, I'd say, than Moria. Well, Moria, like you're like there's drinking water, you know, is really intense. Like, and that's like you're like, yeah, I guess both of them, both sites like are struggling for water, you know, but one's like more temporary. It's supposed to be temporary, and the other one's permanent, you know, it's a
Mm.
permanent camp. And there's difference between emergency camps and permanent camps.
And so this
Um,
permanent camp that's in Jordan, right?
yeah.
There, you're saying that they really struggle to get water. How can they stay hydrated and afford to water a fruit tree?
Yeah, so basically, like with the design that I'm doing is it's taking their gray water, so their like drinking water or their the rainwater. I'm like collecting rainwater during the raining season, and then with like all their dishwater or their if they're doing laundry, it's just getting funneled through here and it's having like a natural gray water system that can filter that water so it be able to be used into the fruit trees afterwards.
So you give them this like technology, or you help them build it, or
Yeah, yeah, help them build it. It's like a little box that like this 1,000 liter cube that they can, if they're doing dishes or if they're just taking a shower, they can funnel that water so that they're using that water multiple times instead of wasting that water, you know. And obviously they have a bit of water, you know. So like there you don't need that 100% too much water because you can get like have shade nets so that they're slowing down evaporation and also mulching. So like with straw or greens that there's like a lot of techniques like a waking bed that the gravel at the bottom. So the, like basically a barrel of water and half of it is like for the roots and
Mhm.
then the other one is water and it's the roots are drinking from the bottom of the barrel and not drinking it from the top where if it exposes to the sun that water has a chance to evaporate
Mm.
where if you're putting 100 like 20 liters down into that barrel it's gonna drink 100% of that water and there's
That
zero
makes sense.
evaporation.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
like, so the roots reach down between the gravel and into where the water is, and it's not like roots
Exactly.
in soil that's wet, because the soil that's on top would get the sun to evaporate it, but they got this water in the bottom. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So where do you get the materials to build these like water systems?
So I always try to work as much as with what they have in the refugee camp. And if I can't find it in the refugee camp, so I'm trying to like support refugee businesses as much as possible. And then if I can't find it in the refugee camp, then I'll go outside of that because I want to try to make sure that my project is 100% being spent almost in the refugee camp, besides the trees that are happening also.
Right, I never thought of that. So these permanent refugee camps have businesses inside them.
Yeah, exactly. We think of refugee camps of like don't have their own businesses, but the majority of them have their local that have money going, you know, like
Yeah.
wherever you'll have people, you'll have money, people exchanging money between each other, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Palestinians and Arabs are like used to be like are known for being good business people, you know, from the day of time, like since the beginning of what we call religion, Jesus, like Palestinians have been there when Jesus was there, you know, making money and passing down those genes and passing down those like as much as the Jewish people were at the time, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
they're like yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so you're I think you said you wanted to get like 20 to 30 families last time we talked, 300 trees or something.
Yeah, so 300 trees between the 20 families so that they can have like their own like mini orchard
Mm-hmm.
that they have in their like little oasis on their rooftop where they can just be like have a place to relax and then they could also make cuttings out of it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where you teach them how to make cuttings and then those cuttings can get rooted and then they can have mother plants, you know, and then from those mother plants they can have babies like you can make like 10 to 15 trees off of one tree and then that's like you're constantly making more trees happen, you know, like the Granny Smith that we all eat today is breeded by one mother that we've been cutting that we all know of, like in Canada or in the US, is through one mother, the Granny Smith, you know. It's all through one cutting, the same genetic, the same. And people also underestimate, or these are also, these people know that too, you know. You give them a tree, they're just going to try to propagate it as well, you know. It's not anything new to them either. They've seen it being propagated, they're close to nature. A lot of this stuff is, I'm trying to show them where they can waste, and then try to give them an opportunity to make money as well through these trees. And if they're passionate about farming, you know, I'm not going to ask a family to do it if they don't want to do it. I'm not like, you'll have more of a success rate with that if you find out what they want, you know, or what they need.
What can all fruit trees work like that? Can you cut a branch off and turn it into a tree if with the right strategies, obviously?
Yeah, most trees can. Most trees can. You would use a rooting solution. You can take a root too, like, and graft it. So you would take a root, and then you would, like, you can also do layering, where it's really popular now on like social media. You would like cut a part of the branch off, and or like scar one part of the branch off, and then the other part, and then you would take off the bark, and then you would add like a cup or something, and then it would root, and then you would, at the end of like 3 months, you would cut it, and then you would have like a fruit tree that would be fruiting a lot faster than other trees, you know.
It's funny you say that. I saw a video of that yesterday of someone like you're saying, ripping the bark off, wrapping like a Ziploc bag of dirt around it, and then some tin foil around that, and then leaving it for whatever 3 weeks or something, and coming back, and it's got a bunch of roots, and they cut it off, and then that's a tree.
Yeah. So that's air layering, and then there's just like cold cutting, where you're trying to like cut it, and then fig trees, mulberry trees are like the easiest trees to do it, because they they're easily propagated, you know. Like a lot of, like, even like most trees and plants, you can propagate them like that, you know.
Yeah, mulberry trees, that makes sense. So I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm an ISA certified arborist. So I'm basically a lumberjack. I cut trees. I've worked in tree work since I was a kid with my dad, and mulberry trees specifically are like freaking weeds, man. Those things, you can hack them down to nothing, and unless you completely obliterate the stump and every root in the ground, it's coming back. Those things always come back, which is nice that they grow something that you can eat. So that's cool.
Yeah, and they're so delicious. Oh my God.
Yeah, mulberries,
they really are.
We had one in my parents' backyard. I grew up with one, and I ate from it all the time. Yeah. So tell me about this. You're talking about like making these, I don't know if you call it an irrigation system, greywater system, or whatever you're talking about, and you're buying the materials when you get there. So you're not just like, technically, you're not really just going and being like, here's some seeds, here's how you water them, here's how you take care of the plants. You are also doing, like, I hate to say, but a certain amount of engineering as well. Like, you're not just showing up with seeds and throwing them in dirt and saying, there you go, see ya. Is there anything else that you're like helping them build to make it more efficient, or is it just the greywater system?
It really depends on the person and what they're like. I'm going there trying to design as much as possible what makes sense, you know, what makes sense to them, and what they're willing to do. Where are they? How far are they willing to push themselves? I'm trying to like see, oh, is this good? Is this not good? Are you okay with this? And then just trying to redesign things that are like coming in from a designer's point of view, you know, and what makes sense, what's a good idea, like showing them a different way of thinking about it as well, you know, like a permaculture lens, throwing a permaculture lens to the project.
That's awesome. You mentioned like wanting to green the desert. Elaborate.
Yeah, it's like that's my ultimate goal or dream now these days, is to turn a desert into a forest, you know, and hold back the water, because a lot of engineering in general is it, like you were saying, is that, or what I'm about to say is that, like, in a city, you want the water to leave as fast as possible. You want, so like your house, you want it to be drained away from your house as fast as possible. But in land, we're actually trying to slow it down, but take the slowest route off your property. And what's happening now is like you have these like hills that are, or like mountains that are full like that are bald, you know? So when it does rain, it just like kind of like goes off and goes into the creek, from the creek into a river into a lake or a dam, and then after it gets pushed out into the ocean, and then you never see it again, you know? And it's taking the fastest, and then there's erosion patterns. And trying to, if no one's gonna like, if there's no human intervention and it's already at that stage of like degradation, it's never gonna come back. You need to come in and kind of like turn it into a more positive, more positive, like less erosion pattern, slowing down through like swales or through net and pans, different strategies to slow down the water so that it can sink onto your property, so that you don't, so that like all that water goes into your aquifer, like, or starts creating soil, or that grass can, instead of being up for 2 months, it's up for 3 months, and then slowly it's regreening, you know, like you get grass and then you get shrubs, and then you go from a shrub to a tree, and then you go from a tree to, maybe because you've casted so much shade, you can start growing a tree that, like an oak tree, that can live, like that can for up to 2,000 years old, you know, and breaking that cycle. Yeah. So there's like different strategies, but my whole goal is to regreen the desert with refugees, because they're already in the most, usually in the places that are gonna hit climate change like first, you know.
Yeah, places that are
We
going to
have
be
these,
most affected earliest on in the process of climate change.
yeah, are going to be these like places in the Middle East, or in Northern Africa, or in like like in Asia, you know, or in like Australia. Some parts of Australia is like certifying, and yeah, even in Canada and in California, we're starting to see that, you know, where places are starting to become deserts, you know, like BC and Alberta are like small places that are like, you have cactus that grow there, you know, that are starting to pop up, where they're like starting to become deserts. So yeah, so that's the dream right there,
And
is
that,
to,
so you want to green the desert, and you were working in Jordan, and you just came from Iraq.
yeah, where I was working with another organization called, for a friend, permaculturist friend, and he's been doing this for about 15 years now. So I'm kind of like, he's been doing permaculture design and working in 15 or 25 countries. Busy guy,
So he's been
but
doing what you're doing.
yeah, he's kind of like a teacher slash friend and mentor. And he's been sending me, well, he sent me to Iraq, because I was telling him, oh, I was gonna go to Jordan. And he's like, oh, before you go there, you know, come to my demonstration camp, my demonstration site in Kurdistan, Iraq. And that's where he has like a bigger, I guess, name, and he's been out there for a lot longer. So he has like, yeah, he has like a bit more contracts, I guess, for organizations. And he invited me to teach farming to Syrian refugees and locals, that with the Hungarian help and Hungarian Aid
That's awesome, man.
Foundation.
I love what you're doing. I love hearing about it. We're coming up on 2 hours here. I don't want to take up your whole day.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you got other stuff to
I
do.
have to. Yeah,
So
exactly.
let's wrap this up. One thing that I like to ask every guest, this is a little bit off topic. So if you imagine the consciousness is represented by a little man in your head watching a computer screen, okay? And just bear with me. And you know how people put sticky notes on their computer monitor to try and remind themselves of things?
Yeah.
So if you could write something on a sticky note that would just suddenly, at the snap of a finger, appear inside the consciousness of every human on the planet, what would you write on that sticky note?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's good. Yeah, I'd say, wow, I have to think about that, but I guess I would stick on a bit of the topic of today of being, remember to have a lot of gratitude and vulnerability, and judgment, like to minimize the judgment and have kindness, more
Nice.
kindness, I think.
Gratitude,
That would
vulnerability,
be it.
no judgment, more
And
kindness. I think you could fit all that on a sticky note, four little lines there. That's awesome. I like that. That's a good answer.
That's what I would stick.
So is there anything that you want to say before we kind of sign off here?
Just remember for all your listeners just continue dreaming and to it's maybe stick off the rat race. And just like, we have a very short time on the planet, and remember to enjoy every day and laugh and make the best of this life. And you're not locked into a prison cell, and you can do whatever you set your mind to.
Nice.
That's what I would finish.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good final message. I like that. What about anyone that wants to reach out to you for any reason? Where can they get in contact with you?
They could contact me through social media is the best place. Derek Myatt on Instagram, or my email is derekmyatt@gmail.com. But who uses emails these days? So social media is the best place to find me.
Perfect.
Or Jardin Solidaire.
We'll wrap that up here. Yeah. Thank you, listener, for listening this far. Hey, you listening to this right now. Yes, you. I appreciate that you've listened to it this far. That's awesome. And that means that you at least enjoyed it, or else you would have stopped it and went and done something else. And it would be really cool if you could share it with someone. I'm sure you know somebody that might also enjoy it. So just, hit the little share button, and there'll be like a link you can copy, and you can just text it to your BFF Jill. I don't know if you know a Jill. I don't know. Just somebody. Just share it with one person, and I will be forever grateful. Thank you. Have a great day.